Hey there, and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast for people who like wine, but not all the stuffiness that sometimes goes along with it. And you know, speaking of wine, many people, many wine lovers daydream about maybe becoming a winemaker themselves. However, that would involve a career change, which a lot of people are unable to do. Today's guest made just such a move, going from the world of theater, film, and stage to winemaking. Her pivot was gutsy, but as you get to know Sabrine Rodems, winemaker at Rath Wines, you'll see it's perfectly in keeping with her character and personality. She is a bold winemaker, passionate, and she's also a ton of fun, and we're so excited to have her on our show today. We, of course, are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orland, and I just have to set the scene for you here. We are sitting outside on the patio of Rath Wines here in the middle of the Santa Lucia Highlands and the Salinas Valley in Monterey County. And we are overlooking the estate San Saba Vineyards. There's a beautiful pond right in front of the tasting room with lily pads and reeds, and in the distance there's a Queen Anne Victoria house, and there's a story to that. There's many stories here at Rath, and you would think that the winery is named for the grapes of Rath, the book by John Steinbeck, one of the local heroes, but that's not so, and we'll find out why.
We are in the Salinas Valley, Steinbeck country, but yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. So, Sabrine, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's super fun to be here, and this is just like paradise looking out at this scene.
We always say every day, it doesn't suck.
Not at all.
It's pretty nice here, and we love sitting out here after, we call it the 4:30 glass of Sauv Blanc. Don't tell the owners. But yeah, we love sitting out here after work and just relaxing for a little bit. And the views here are spectacular. And if any of you have not been down to the Salinas Valley, where a lot of row crops are, a lot of grapes are, a lot of avocados, a lot of citrus here as well. It's really a beautiful place, and you really see person to product what you're getting.
Yes, which is so great. You get to see the hands-on work and, taste the vineyards right here. So tell us how a theater person ends up making wine in the Salinas Valley.
Well, I actually had a really great career as a stagehand, and but it's a lot of hard work, just like anything is a lot of hard work. I shouldn't say that because, being a winemaker at a small winery is definitely a lot of hard work, especially when you're the only one here I was the only one here for a very long time. But I just knew when I was getting close to the end of my 20s that, I didn't want to be unloading trucks the rest of my life, although that's kind of still what I do. But, you get to that point where my sisters were both scientists, and, the grass is always greener. I think they always wanted to be more arty and more like me in their careers, and I always wanted to be more sciencey like them in their careers. And, I always say that's the problem when your parents tell you can do whatever you want, because then you're like, oh, maybe I can, And so I left, although I still keep my union card, local 16, IATSE San Francisco. I pay my dues every year, and I keep my card. But I love that job. It was a great job. I had a great experience there, but I just knew I needed something else for my vocation.
And you were working with the San Francisco Opera.
I was at the Opera House, and then I had done 4 seasons with the Opera House, and then I had done about 4 or 5 years out, mostly in the film business, in a lot of theater as well. We work everywhere there. In fact, sometimes you go and run slides at Moscone Center, if they need somebody. At least that's how it was when I was there. You sort of did the tour. But I worked on a lot of films back when Robin Williams and people were setting up sound stages out at Mare Island or in Alameda in the old Navy stations. And so we just go into these big warehouses, and some of them were for munitions, some of them were for holding parts or whatever, and we would make them into sound stages, and that's what we did back then. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun. Yeah.
So going from music to winemaking, are there comparisons between opera and opera productions and winemaking?
Yeah, I think actually that's a good analogy, because timing is everything in both of those businesses. And if you're standing in the wrong spot backstage at Phantom of the Opera, let's say, and you don't know what you're doing, which could have been a description of me a couple times, when you get 20 minutes to figure out somebody else's job, you'll get run over. There's not a lot of space, and things move like a ballet backstage and in front of the stage. And the same thing with grape picking. Really, we are looking at numbers and tasting fruit to the day before we decide to pick that fruit the next day. And so you have to be pretty nimble. You have to know what tanks you have. We're a small winery, and we're also a premium winery, so we're not here to flip tanks every 7 days. I mean, no offense to the guys who have to do it. I don't have to do that. So we're really letting these fermentations sort of play out in their own natural time. And so that might be a 10-day, 15-day Pinot fermentation. So we're really trying to balance what's coming in next, what's pressing off, what's going to barrel, and then you have to schedule all of that. So it sort of becomes a ballet as well.
Yeah, it's your own little production here.
Yes, yeah.
Well, so you don't just get to walk from one exit stage right and you go into winemaking. So you had to go to school?
Yeah, I actually had to sort of start over, because I didn't even take calculus in high school. I mean, I think I started calculus in high school and then I dropped out. So I had to start over essentially. So there's at San Francisco State, there is a post-bac pre-med program there that if you want to go into any sciences, but you're coming from the art world or you came from something totally different, you can take that coursework without having to get a degree. I didn't have to declare a degree. I didn't have to, say what I was going to. It's just a 2-year program, essentially. You can take 2 or 3 years. But I started over from the beginning. Like, literally, I took chemistry 1A. I took basic statistics. I took calculus. I took microbiology. All the basics you have to take to get into medical school, you have to take to get into Davis as an undergrad and a graduate student.
It's amazing.
So I was sort of pre-med. My sister is a doctor. My other sister is a research scientist. And I thought I was going to go into medicine. And then I happened to meet my husband, who I'm married to, and he had lived with his brother when he was a surgical resident. I had lived with my sister when she was a medical student at UCLA. She was a medical student. She's the oldest of 6. I'm the youngest. So there's 8 years between us. So she was in medical school while I was an undergrad.
At UCLA.
At UCLA, and we lived together. And, so there was no romantic idea of medical school for me. And my husband, who I had just met at the time, kind of said, I don't know if I want to be in a relationship with somebody who's going to medical school. And it didn't offend me. He was 36 and I was 28, and I got it, And to be honest, I had taken at that point organic chemistry and I got an A, but literally you do not see the light of day. Like, you just don't have a life. There's no quality of life there. So, unless you're ready for that for the next 8 years of your life or 6 years of your life, then I started thinking about it. And I thought, and to be honest, my sister, the doctor, said, we don't need another doctor in the family. We need an enologist in the family. And, I laughed, and then I started thinking about it. I mean, I think she meant it as a joke, but I also think it comes from that same sense of, I think they wanted me to sort of stay in the arts, and I think because we already had a bunch of scientists in the family, and I think they also just wanted an inexpensive bottle of wine.
That's probably the real motivation.
The family discount.
So that's what happened. I wound up transferring all my units to Davis, and sort of the rest is history. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. That required how many years before you were able to actually make a living at it?
It was a lot, but I will tell you, if you're in your late 20s and you aren't happy with what you're doing, I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a house. I didn't have obligations. Just do it. What does it take to live on? I mean, I still worked as a stagehand during the summers and whenever they needed somebody in the holiday time. And I would make my little bit of money. I put a lot of things on credit cards, and you do it. You do it, and now it's worth it, right? So, because I'm here. It takes a lot of work. But I tell my nieces and nephews, especially if the economy's bad or things like this past year are going on, I say to them, go back to school. I mean, if you can, the last year is unusual. I think Zoom school is difficult. I don't think I would be very good at it. I'm a very left-handed, kind of right brain kind of person. But I think that school is an important investment in you. And if you have to go in debt to do it, do it.
And following your passion, if you're doing something you love, it's not work.
Right. It's not work. That's right.
That's exactly right. So how did you come to be at Wrath?
I actually applied for this job through Venn Jobs, which is UC Davis's I guess their
Their
job
board,
posting. Yeah. And I got an interview, and I think a part of it was I was older. I basically am a mechanic. I mean, I was a stagehand. I ran generators, like, I think in a small space like this where they wanted to leave the person here by themselves, you really need to not be scared of electricity. You need to not, although I hate plumbing, you need to not be scared of plumbing. I know it's funny that I'm a winemaker and I hate plumbing, but plumbing in the winery is a little different than like plumbing in your house. Because, electrons, you can't see them, but water, you can see water. And it leaks. But yeah, so I think that was a part of the sell for me to be here. And I started as the assistant winemaker in 2004, literally right after I finished my degree at Davis.
Great. So you found a home immediately.
Yeah, that's right. And I haven't left, which is unusual in our business. But I've been able to grow with at the time it was San Saba Bocage, and San Saba is the name of our home vineyard. And then we became Wrath in, I think, 07. I think it was 07 was the vintage. But yeah, and so I've been able to evolve with the company, which is nice.
Should we talk about the name?
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it comes
yeah.
from? Did you help with that?
No, actually, we were looking for names. Michael Thomas, who's the owner of Wrath, and myself. I mean, everybody in the company, like literally every day. It's the most disheartening feeling when you're looking for a name, and every day you come in with like the one you thought of last night.
I got the winner.
And I got it. And you come in, everybody's like, no, that's not it.
Not going to work.
You're like, shit. I thought that was it, But one day he was visiting, and he was coming down the road here, a beautiful road, River Road. If you're down here, please drive it. It's really beautiful. And he's listening to Led Zeppelin's Going to California. And I equate Wrath with the Grapes of Wrath as well, because the first thing I did when I started working here again was I reread a lot of the Steinbeck I had read in high school. But he said, I've got it. It's from Led Zeppelin. He's like, it's Wrath. And I'm like, that's not from Led Zeppelin. He's like, no, it's from Going to California. And then he played it for us. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. I'm like, that's it. We're done. Like, that's it. You just, when you hear it, you know it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And
it's a great song.
The lyric, to quote it, says, it seems that the wrath of the gods got a punch on the nose.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, no, and so once he said it, we were done. Because we spent weeks thinking of names, and either it's taken, it's really, really hard to find a name.
It is.
Or it's somebody's second label, or we always worried about trademarks. My husband was a trademark lawyer, and he always says you don't want to build your house on water. Don't build your house on water. So you don't want to build a business and come to find out that they were using the mark before you were on some sub brand. So it's we were very careful about it. But once he said that, it was done. It was really a done deal.
It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Tell me how it fits this place.
Well, the funny thing is he talks about Led Zeppelin. I actually think to me it's the wind, because the wind is probably the most challenging things when it comes to grape growing here. Rain is not a problem for us. We just don't get that much rain. But this north-south wind that Steinbeck actually talks about in a lot of his books, and the reason why when you come down here, you'll see often the grapevines and all the big trees bend southerly. To me, that's the thing that stresses the plant the most. When a grapevine gets too windy, out here, it actually shuts down its respiration system. It'll shut what we call the stomato cells on the bottom of the leaves, and it'll actually stop respiring. It'll shut down. And that creates a lot of stress for the plant. And we like to think that stressing a grapevine, tends to throw nutrients and flavor components into grapes, because basically the plant wants its progeny to have as much stuff in it as it can before it dies, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of plants do, to protect the seeds and so it can grow again.
Right.
Fantastic. So you have brought out an array of wines that you make.
I have.
And let's get started with one wine, because we want to hear the story of you through your wines.
Okay, this is I poured the wrong one first. Oh,
That's
I think
all right.
That's what the dump bucket's for.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'll just go for the shoulder. So the first wine is the X Sab Blanc. X is our second label, and originally it was it's stainless. So the two whites we're going to taste are stainless. And then the Pinot originally is an early pick Pinot. We pick it at about 23 bricks. It's supposed to be sort of a lighter, more picnic-style Pinot. And we don't put as much oak on it. Originally it was all neutral oak, and now we put a little bit of new oak on it, but not a lot. We really want to show the brightness. So this is our X Sab Blanc. X-E-X is the two big letters on it.
And what does that signify?
Ex is Latin for from. So originally it was ex anima from the I think it's from the energy or from the animation essentially, but now it's called just X, this line. And we also have ex vitae, which is from the vine. That's our 100% whole cluster wine that we won't be tasting today, but is lovely. The owner of Wrath is an archaeologist, so we have a lot of Latin things, and he works in Italy a lot. So he's actually
doing architectural digs.
Yeah, archaeological digs. He has actually he had
Excuse me.
okay. He had 2 digs. He had I think one is stopped at some point. I think you lose your permit, but they had collected all of their items and or basically just working it out. And then another dig he still has actively going in Italy, but it's amazing. He actually found a wine distribution center, which is fantastic. I mean, it gives me goose pimples. And
he dug up a wine distribution. Is that what you mean?
He actually found it was like literally loading dock with cart ruts, and then they knew they were tanning hides because they found a lot of pomegranate, and so they were using these giant cow bladders to fill up with wine to take down to the boats. And it's amazing what they found there.
This is in Italy?
This is in Italy, yeah. It's the Aplanus Project. I don't know if that's the one where they found the distribution center, but his work that he does at the University of Texas is pretty fascinating. I stay up to it on their web page because I think it's so interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And do you know how old that site that they're excavating is?
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's something you'd have to
really cool to know.
Look up. I'd hate to misspeak.
Sure.
Say this Sauvignon Blanc is delicious.
Is this at 4 o'clock or 4:30?
Yeah. This is our 4:30 Sauv Blanc. Yeah, I love this wine. It's we keep it a little bit on the herby side because we like that style. I love this wine because it sort of shows our energy and what we're about. It doesn't get the best scores because it's a little herby, but I don't think Sauv Blancs in general get big scores. But we always show it because we don't care.
That's great.
You know what I mean? It's like it's sort of our punk rock move.
I love that. Yeah, it's awesome. But you know what? You love it, and so why not? And that's what we want our listeners to be comfortable with. If you love the wine, doesn't matter what the critics say.
I think this is fantastic.
It doesn't, and I just think it has to do with your own style. I mean, I always say no chef goes around insisting that you have the lamb if you don't like lamb. So it just doesn't work that way, right?
Absolutely. Oh, that's really. Yeah. It's got a great nose on it. Really fun.
Yeah. This is the 19. It's interesting because I think we're almost to the 2020. We usually release the vintage pretty fast. Like we bottle the 2020 in December, and it typically goes to market March, April. We might, probably because of COVID, we're a little bit long in the 19, but when it's really, this seems to be a little creamy, which is kind of nice, actually. I like that little bit of richness in the mouth, a little more of that honeydew melon.
Sure, fantastic.
The next one is the stainless steel Chardonnay. And again, this wine gets bottled in December, and then it usually goes to market pretty quick.
So what are the varieties you're growing in San Saba?
So our home vineyard is Sauv Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Syrah, and then we have some Falangina as well.
Nice.
We have 2 rows of Falangina at the very end. And I have that in the lineup here if we have time. Well,
because I've never even heard of it.
It's an Italian white varietal. Most
fantastic.
of the time, it's interesting because we do a lot of experiments here at Wrath. And when we first planted it, even though we had 2 rows, I thought I was going to get a half ton. I got like 3 or 4 tons of that fruit. The clusters were huge. I mean, the biggest thing I'd ever seen. And then it sort of, because it was the first grafting, it sort of went crazy, and then it sort of has calmed down since then. But yeah, I think if you did the math, it was cropping at like 6 tons an acre on the first graft pick.
Surprise.
Yeah, I know. And then we're like, because we're thinking I'll get a half a ton. I was going to just do a regular direct to press white wine with it. And we had all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, let's just do a bunch of experiments. We've never used this wine. So we did a whole 100% whole cluster. We did on skin for the full fermentation, in bin, juice only. I mean, we did everything. And we really like the on skin, but I think this year we're going to split it. We're going to do a little direct to press, like a regular white. The unfortunate thing about that Falangina, we just tasted the Sauv Blanc. It actually, when you do a regular standard white wine with it, it doesn't have a huge amount of flavor. And it's very white. It almost looks like water. And I love Italian Falanginas, but it just doesn't grow the same way here. It really is so different here in California because it's not Italy.
Yes, that's something you really like to do.
Yeah.
This Chardonnay is really nice too.
It's beautiful.
Before we get too far off of it, I really have to compliment you on this. Is a really nice, that great acid and just nice balance to it.
Yeah, and Mary, you were saying about, taste what you like and try everything. And that's the one thing I want to say about Chardonnay is I'm not a big Chardonnay drinker. I usually drink it in a bubble form. But I make Chardonnay the way people who aren't big Chardonnay fans like Chardonnay, with good acidity. I don't mind if you have fat, but you've got to have acid. I don't mind if the mid-palate's lush, but it's got to finish clean. So even my biggest Chardonnay, which is our San Saba, which is full of malolactic and has a little more new French oak in it, it's still got a nice clean acidity on the finish. So if you come into my tasting room and you say, I don't drink Chardonnay, I might make you try it because usually you'll realize that every winemaker is different, and I make 4 or 5 different Chardonnays to show those how they can be different, and you almost will always walk out with a bottle of it.
Oh, that's terrific.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So talk about being here in the Santa Lucia Highlands and the community, and you mentioned the weather, the wind being a huge factor. What else defines this region for you?
Well, I also mentioned that I love the fact that it's not a monoculture. I love the fact that there are row crops. There are lemons and avocados and grapes. And we used to have cactus here, and then we have a sheep field, so there's some sheep.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah. When you guys drive north on River Road, you'll see the sheep. But it is just, it was a real priority for me sort of coming into wine later than most in my life, that I went to a place that it was important if I was going to sort of stay there and have that be my community, that it wasn't a monoculture. Because I think nobody wants to sort of live and work where they work and have it constantly be what everything is about. I think it can be a little bit hard on your psyche a little bit. And the other thing I love about around here is, like, you just came from Pizzoni and Mark sent some lovely wines. Like these guys, right. These guys around here, they've gotten my tractor out of a couple ditches. I mean, this is, when there's no one to call, you call who you think might be around, and so.
I love that. That is the mark of a nice neighbor in the Santa Lucia Highlands. You got my tractor out of a couple ditches.
Yeah. No, it's
not borrowing a cup of sugar.
No, it's not. When I was first here, because this building site was new, a lot of the dirt around it was very soft, and I was the only one here often. When the builders were here building this building and I was at the winery, it was fine because they had a grate all, and they would if I got the forklift stuck, they would just come get me out. I'm sure they heard my wheels spinning. They'd be like, is that Sabrine? But after they left, I would be stuck here. So I would call the guys at MPI, which is my vineyard management company, or I'd have to call Kirk Williams or somebody to come get a winch in a truck and get me out. I'm stuck.
Well, let's try another wine and keep talking.
Yeah. This is the same line, the X line. These wines are all pretty low price point. I think the first 2 you just had are retail $19.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, my goodness. That's great.
Yeah.
Really high quality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then this one, I think, God, I'm terrible with pricing and I should know better. I think it's 27 or 28. This is our Pinot.
I love that it's really translucent.
Yes.
Yeah.
We picked this wine. We really conscientiously picked the huge component of this wine at 22 and a half, 23 bricks. We really sort of want it to be a brighter, more picnic style wine.
Ooh. Oh, I love the cherry. It just
and we do still on this wine. We still do on most of all of our reds. We do 100 or 20% whole cluster. So you get that sort of stem component that sort of lifts the fruity part up.
A little bit of spiciness.
Yeah, that spiciness comes from those stems. You bet.
So.
Gosh,
Lovely.
I like that.
This is really good.
Yeah,
my kind of picnic.
Juicy, pretty bright, nice and acidic. Yeah, it's a great wine to make, and it's not, the more acid you keep in these wines, the easier they are to make. So it makes my job easy.
Oh, I had not heard that.
Yeah, because you don't have to worry. Higher pH wines, you worry about microbes that like high pH. Not a lot of microbes, except for Acetobacter, which makes vinegar, likes those kind of acids. So, it's just a little bit less worry. It ages better at lower pH at a higher acid level. So, it makes my job easier because I don't have to worry. I mean, I always say there's a fine line between efficiency and laziness.
And girl, you are walking it
every day, baby.
I walk the line.
That's right. That's right.
So talk about your team here.
I have a great team. Miguel Lepe and Rafael Vidales are my 2 assistant winemakers here, and they run the winery, and we also have our own bottling line. So today, when you guys showed up, they're bottling. It's a lot of work to run a bottling line. In fact, probably the first 5 or 6 years of being here, my job was to run a bottling line. I mean, I was making wine too and doing everything else, but that's the thing. It takes a lot of time, and bottling lines are very finicky things. Ours is Italian, so it's extra finicky.
Italian
But it's just a lot of mechanical things that operate on very low tolerance, and they're constantly moving parts. So you learn a lot. Not a lot of winemakers know how to run a bottling line. I think it's a good thing to know. It makes you pretty confident in your mechanical skills. After the first 3 or 4 years, I stopped having to call the mechanic, from the bottling line company, because I think I pretty much broken everything and fixed it.
Fix it yourself.
And took notes when the guy was here. Did he say? Once you figure out how to fix all the parts and what the parts are, it's not that complicated. But it took me about 4 years. I'd say 4 or 5 years.
You are truly hands-on.
Yeah, no, you have to be in a small winery. I'm not here writing work orders. There's just me. I mean, and then there was me and one other guy.
Yeah.
Like people be like, "Do you have the work orders?" And I'd be like, "There's no work order. There's just the 2 of us."
Is this what you pictured when you thought I might like being a winemaker?
I knew that as a winemaker, because I was older and I knew the reality of it, which is you choose your career by choosing the size of winery you're going to work in. You choose your style by choosing the size of winery you're going to work in. Because when you go to work in a big winery, you don't get to choose the style. The style's already there.
Established.
And the one thing I love about Michael Thomas and I's relationship and our the way we work, and even with Miguel and Rafael, is we all make those decisions as a team. And luckily, I mean, to be honest, I got the job here and forgot to ask what their style was. And I was like so excited to get the job. I said yes. And then I went home to my boyfriend, now husband, and I said, I didn't really ask. Like I didn't really ask what their style was. I hope I like it. But the nice thing is it's a small enough winery that you get to impose a little bit more of your style. And I mean, that's why they hire me, right? They hire me as an expert. Right. I mean, at the time I wasn't an expert yet, but you're hiring me to help you make the best wine possible. And even some wines, I mean, all the wines I make for Rath are my style, but I have other people I make, smaller clients that I make some small lots for. And, they might want to do something that's not my thing. And I just have to tell them, you just need to know that's not my thing. Like
you'll still make it.
I'll still make it,
yeah.
and I'll make it as best as you're telling me what you want. But just know it's not going to be my favorite wine out there. It's God bless Gamay Rouge, but it's not my thing.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I really want to like it. I will taste every Gamay Rouge you put in front of me, but there's something about the flavor of it that I don't like.
Well, let's talk about the Rath wines, and I want to talk about the label
because
that's
a cool
where
label.
Yes, the design, and this is where
punk,
we can.
I think, like you were talking about punk rock. It's got it's edgy.
Yeah, we actually had a street artist do this, so it's not a font. It's actually a piece of art, and out of New York, he did this design, and then it's a JPEG essentially, which makes it difficult when you're trying to put stuff together.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and then the as you can tell by looking at it, the drawing below is basically the silhouette of what's behind me.
And that
here
includes
at the winery. And that's the old
the
house.
Victorian.
And then this is on the right-hand side. This is the SLH bench over here, and then that's our vineyard.
And we're looking
It's
right at
literally
the
the same
SLH.
view. Yep.
So the Victorian, did we talk about how that got here?
It's called the Stafford House, and he was a doctor in Salinas, and he I'm terrified of dripping on your equipment.
I know my husband would say, "I can't believe you have liquid around the
electronics."
Yeah. Oops.
But he let me give you a little more. He was a doctor, and I think they had 3 or 4 kids. We have a little history on the house, and it was moved out here in the early 70s. And I think when Dr. Lemon, who hired me out here, who's Michael Thomas's stepdad, he hired me. I think there was a dream of sort of using it as a tasting room, but it really, you'd have to just rebuild it. We were chatting earlier. It's very small inside. You certainly could not fit a wheelchair down the hallway. And we blew on it, it would blow over. We've had contractors come in and sort of shore it up and make it so it doesn't fall down. Now that it's on our label, we try to make sure it doesn't fall down.
It's very pretty.
It is very cool, yeah. People know us as usually they call it the creepy old house.
Creepy old house, that's your landmark.
Yeah.
Like as you look over this pond and the vineyards, and then it's in the background there, and it's really gorgeous with the hills, and it's a beautiful setting.
Yeah, it is pretty.
Okay, so this wine is...
So this is our Wrath 115667, which are 2 clones of Pinot Noir that we have on our property. We have more clones now. We planted some, right? You guys are looking straight at the babies.
Okay. So for our listeners and people like me who don't know, what do you mean by 115667?
So these are clonal numbers. We have I think we have now 8 or 9 different clones on our property. The original plantings of Pinot was 6 main clones. 115667, Pomard 4 and 777, and 828 and Swan. And the only thing that wine drinkers need to know, unless they're geeky wine drinkers, about clones is that it actually creates a difference in the flavor profile. We all are mutated. We all, I always say clones are sort of like you and your sister came from the same parents, but you're different, right?
Yeah.
That's not exactly how it works, but just
I like it.
Yeah, it works for me.
Yeah.
And the if your difference is that one has a furry leaf and one doesn't, I really don't care. But if your difference is that you actually have distinct flavor characteristics, then I care. And that's why Pinot happens to be the one variety of grape that actually mutates the most and has the most clones. And that's why you'll see this on other brands' labels where they have the clonal designation. They're very different. To me, 115 is sort of like a structural component and is a little bit cherry, sort of black cherry. And 667 to me is totally Bing cherry, black cherry. So we put sort of the cherry berries together in this wine.
This is
really
definitely
nice.
Richer than the X Pinot that we were tasting.
Yes, yes. And that X has some 115667 in it too. It's mostly 828, but yeah, it's very interesting to see when you ripen this fruit and you do as many experiments as we do, that you sort of see and you get to sort of pick where you want your structure and your flavor and how it fills your mouth. You get to sort of pick that by your picking times, essentially.
Sure.
That's the chemistry bit. That's cool.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's
and a bit of magic, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, it's they don't call it a guarantee, they call it farming. There's a lot of luck involved.
Sure.
But yeah, this wine is actually, people ask me what my favorite Pinot is, and I don't know, it's a toss up. But I love this is my Friday night wine because on Friday, you don't want to think about it. You just want to drink it.
Right.
You want it to just be yummy.
Mm-hmm. You want your guarantee.
Yeah.
I know. I think for a lot of people, they just don't want to think about wine. They want it to be yummy.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is I go to home to my husband, who's a lawyer and a mediator, and all he wants to do on Friday is talk about wine. And that's like the last thing I want to do. Right. He's trying to bust out some French wine. I'm like, no. We're drinking 115667 tonight, baby.
I want the sure thing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some cows cruising by right now, which is super cool.
Yeah, those are the Bianchi cows on Bianchi Bench. And the Bianchis, they still live up in the house on the hill, and they still keep cows. There's a lot of cows around here, actually. I know Garrett Buchanan has cows out in Carmel Valley, and that's the beauty of this place.
Yeah.
I call them my cows. They're not my cows.
But you have sheep.
Yeah,
tell us about that.
Yeah, no. We don't have sheep here, but we have sheep on the road for sure. And when you guys drive north, you'll see Nissen Wool. It used to be a wool company, and now they just have sheep. I don't know if they process wool anymore, but and they have a little vineyard now on their property. They used to have more sheep, but everybody's putting in vineyards.
Well, let's taste another wine.
Yeah.
And you're so hands-on.
I hate
here.
pouring these stuff out.
I know.
I know.
But just so for our listeners, we are pouring.
we have spit cups and a dump bucket. We are being responsible. You're very hands-on here, but it's also reading that sometimes you will make lunch for the vineyard crews.
Oh yeah. I'm all about the food. In fact, if
are you
go,
a good cook?
I cook the things I know. Like I'm gotten pretty good at pizza, and I have a little pizza oven that I bring.
Nice.
And the nice thing about the little pizza oven is you can make a pizza in 90 seconds, I
Right.
guess. So once we get everything prepped and going, I'll do the dough at home, but once a week during harvest, I try to make these guys lunch because they're my vineyard guys and for the harvest crew, because we're out in the middle of nowhere. We always have a lot of food here, just because if you forget your lunch, you need to eat. I mean, I always yell at these guys for not eating breakfast, so I always have cereal and milk. And keeping milk, if they don't drink it, I get mad. I'm like, you boys aren't eating your breakfast. You're not drinking your milk.
But it shows the respect and the appreciation you have for your crew.
Oh yeah, and they need one day to not worry about it, and just to relax. And I try to pick kind of a light work day. just so if they want to chill out, and we usually have some beer. We get to relax a little.
Sure.
We go 7 days a week.
Enjoy the occasional beer.
Yes. We during harvest we're 7 days a week, and it's just you need a little break and a little relaxing and eating some good food.
How far away do you live?
I actually live in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So I'm about an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes away.
That's a commute.
Yeah, it is a bit of a commute, but it's worth it. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. And
so on your commute, what do you do? Do you listen to music? Do you listen to podcasts?
I listen to a lot of podcasts now. I used to listen to a lot of NPR.
Yeah, me too.
And now I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm a little bit of a true crimer, so.
Oh, good.
Shout out to the true crime podcasts out there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I love Dateline. I listened to my Dateline this morning.
Okay.
They post 2 on every Tuesday. They post 2.
Twofer.
Yeah.
Tell us about this wine.
So this is what is this? Did I pour the same thing? Oh no, I put it back. This is wait, did I pour the same thing twice?
No, it tastes.
No.
Yeah, this is a Buchanugan.
different.
I screwed that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is Buchanugan. Yeah,
Because you source grapes from other vineyards.
I do. And this is Buchanugan. So this is
Buchanugan.
Garrett
Not
Buchanugan.
a great name.
Fun to say.
John Buchanugan, when I came here, was the owner at Buchanugan, and he was just starting to build the winery. He unfortunately has since passed, but his son Garrett, and again, one of the hardest working people I know. He has cattle in Carmel Valley. He has grapes. They know they have cattle at an Oregon property. I mean, every time you look at the guy's Facebook feed, he's somewhere feeding something. And he's just a really hardworking guy. But I love this fruit. It's 113, 115 clone. 113, we actually planted 113 on our property in the little tiny plants out there that are babies because of this. I don't know anybody I've ever around here who has 113 other than Garrett. Maybe there is somebody, but I just don't know of them. And I love it because it's like eating it. I always have flashbacks to my childhood when your mom would give you a popsicle and stick you in the middle of the linoleum floor and say, "Don't move."
Because you're going to drip all over everything.
It's just that it's a little too, when it's young, it really reconciles to a very pretty wine. But when it's young, it's very tutti fruity. And it makes me laugh. Like I feel like and you kind of feel like you're sucking on the in a new oak barrel, you feel like you're sucking on the popsicle stick a little bit, like it has that
that's a
character to it. It's like the whole package of that image in one.
It's fun.
It's a mouthful. I like it.
It is, but I also get some floral notes on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we picked this actually really early, and it tends to be really high in acid, and that reconciles too. And I remember the first time I picked this fruit, I said to Garrett, "The acids are too high. I can't pick it." He goes, "Sabrine, they will fall out, believe me." And I had tasted his and I liked it. And so I had to trust the guy. And sure enough, we pick about the first or second week of September when everything else picks the second or third week of September. He's my first Pinot that comes in the door besides the X Pinot, which we pick at 23.
Yeah.
And it is, it always becomes this really gorgeous, you're right, it's very fruity, but very floral, has a real sort of a white flower, violet component.
Totally violet.
Yeah, and then we get a little, but again, of that 20% stem in there, you get a little spiciness from the stem.
I'm also smelling that and tasting that.
Do you like to age your Pinots?
We don't. We bottle these after 10 months. I think that especially because we use a lot of stems, we were talking about acid earlier. There's a lot of potassium in stems, and they actually bind to acid, so you have to be really careful. And when the acids, even though it tastes like it has a lot of acid, some of that's the tannin and the spiciness from the stem. So you have to just be really careful. And so aging, they're not crazy high in pH, but we always worry when we get above a 3.65 pH that we're concerned about aging and ageability. We actually just tasted through our library, a 10-year library, because we just had our 10th year anniversary here of Wrath brand.
Hey, congratulations!
Yeah, and we were going to do something.
Sip,
but
hooray.
I think
hooray to that.
I think that we're going to do something probably next year, just because we wanted to offer something for our club. And it's just been a little tricky. But I was really, really happy with the way some of what I perceive as higher pH Pinots have really aged really, really well. And I think a part of it is that the prettiness you get from the stem, like our Ex Vitae, which is 100% stem, is really this Earl Grey bergamot. Like you get this really, it reconciles so differently than a non-stem wine. And I mean, we only have 10 years. This is, we're not in France where I have 100 years of library wines, but it's exciting for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I think about the job of a winemaker, I think one of the appealing things about it for me is that it seems to be a job where you're constantly learning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That there's, you don't get to a point where you already know everything.
Right.
Because everything changes.
No, and I mean, we haven't talked about the fire, but, none of us really dealt with that. And that was, and, you call people and you'd be like, hey, so yeah, this is what I think. And they're like, oh, did you read the study? I'm like, well, you mean the one study? Like there's one paper out of Australia. We're all reading the same thing.
Sure.
Hold on, let me get this bottle of wine.
Were you guys impacted by fire last year?
We had a lot of fire around us here. We did a lot of work. We all freaked out for about 10 minutes. And then we did a lot of work, which is we did a lot of juice samples. I actually got into a lot of the labs before things got crazy.
Because they got so backed up.
They got backed up, but I was sending stuff actually down south before anybody else was because...
you mean your grape samples?
Our samples, we were sending juice samples down, and then we were using the same juice samples and doing bucket fermentations quickly over a 3 or 4 day period in a bucket, and then sending those samples down. So and you
were looking to see whether the fire had tainted anything?
Yeah, we're looking at these guaiacol compounds that are basically what makes barbecue or smoke smell and taste like smoke. It actually, guaiacol is actually naturally occurring in Syrah as well, so...
Well, sometimes you drink a wine and you're like, oh, it's kind of smoky.
Yeah. Syrah is very much like that because it actually has guaiacol in it. So you can't really do the test on Syrah because you sort of get a false positive. What you can do, though, is test the juice and then test you can sort of, or if you have old guaiacol numbers from the year before on your Syrah, you can compare them. But we all, and all these guys around here, these vineyard guys, Kirk Williams, Garrett, Buchanugan, all these guys I work with, Steve McIntyre, like literally... we would be in our tasting room here with all these samples, just trying to get more heads around it, and I mean, I wish if we weren't shooting from the hip so much, we could have probably collected some good data and actually written a paper, but we were just so busy. I mean, no offense, trying to put out the fire that we didn't have the time to be methodical about it. The one thing I love about these guys, because they're farmers, I'm looking at data, but they're looking at like, how far can I see today? What does my weather station say? Do I feel like I'm in the smoke? What's my visibility like from 3 points? Like they are collecting visual data, and that was really important. And so that, I just wanted us to learn something. We made wine from 3 or 4 vineyards. We made wine from all of our vineyards this year. I think there was only one we did not because they were pretty high in elevation. But we made that wine, and I had to deal with them as if we didn't put it in a bottle, they would just charge me the picking costs, which was fine. And we only had to do that with one other person, and all the other wine was fine. But I don't know how you would know, and I sort of told them, if you're going to dump it on the ground, let's just pick it and make a 2-ton lot, a 3-ton lot, and see what we get. And we'll run the, we'll all share the cost of the analysis, and we'll have something. So it's been, that's something, we learned a lot. We learned a lot.
Well, you're going to need that knowledge, it looks like, right?
I hope not. I mean, but we'll see. I do think so, probably sooner than later. But
it's good to have that baseline, if you will.
Right.
So we have another wine in our glass.
This is our San Saba Pinot.
This is beautiful.
So we pick this. We lay out all of our barrels for all of our Pinot blends, and this is the one we pick first. Okay. And we literally score all the barrels. And sometimes we taste too many barrels in one day, and there's a happy face on the barrel. Well, there's a lot of happy faces on these barrels that we tasted at the end of yesterday.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. So sometimes we have to retaste some of them because we're not being particularly critical.
Sure.
The one good thing about what we do here is we're very careful about cleanliness, and we've been doing it for a long time. That there are very few barrels that get kicked out. They typically get kicked out. Just because we know we only need 800 cases of something, and we always bring in an extra 5%, and sometimes we have that extra 5% left over, and sometimes we don't. But I love this wine. It's a little bit of a guilty pleasure. It tends to be higher in new French oak than our other blends. Oftentimes it tends to be really high in new French oak, and then we're like, it can't be that. So we'll pull the blend together on blending day. I'm like, and we'll count. And I'm like, yeah, it can't be 60%. We have to go down to at least 35. So, then we have to take some barrels out and put some other barrels in. But we try to make it balanced,
It's really nice. It's rich, but it also has a nice acid flavor too that gives it some structure and stuff.
A lot of spiciness.
A lot of spice, a lot of anise.
Yep. I think so too. Yeah. I actually, we have 3 main coopers that we use. Another thing we experiment in is cooperage, but usually they're onesies or twosies typically. I'll buy 2 or 4 of something I want to try. The 3 main ones we use here are Terenceau, Ramon, and Hermitage is my favorite. I love Hermitage barrels because I think that you get the baker's spice that is more nutmeg and clove to me than cinnamon and vanilla. I think I love those. And sometimes a Szechuan peppercorn, like those sort of numbing characteristics that you get from nutmeg and clove. And I just think it's really uplifting. It has a vibrancy to it.
And I think this would be a great pairing with barbecue. And I've seen your Instagram feed, and it's full of brisket and barbecue.
Yes. Michael lives in Texas, so he's the barbecuer. Yes.
Fantastic.
I fancy myself as a barbecuer till I look at our Instagram feed, and then I realize I'm really not.
But I think that's fun. And porchetta, too. I saw some nice-looking porchetta.
Yes. And every time you go down there, he takes you to all these barbecue places. And I'm like, I just don't know if I need any more meat right now. Of course you do.
Of course, absolutely.
So your wine obviously pairs well with barbecue.
That's right.
You mentioned pizza. Do you have any other favorite things that you...
We always do for our harvest dinner here, because I'm Californian, we do a cioppino.
Oh,
and I have a giant paella pan that I actually did not buy for paella. I bought it for a cioppino. And so I get it on the Weber, and we do a big cioppino here over the Weber. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And we do that for right before harvest, usually the end of August. We after bottling, but before grapes start rolling in, and it's always a lot of fun. Yeah,
I've asked that question before, but I've never had someone say cioppino, and I love that. That's
and it's funny because I'm the youngest of 6, so my mom, she always we lived in Marin County in Novato, and she had it was a recipe from the old fireman's cookbook from the local firehouse.
Oh, that's fun.
And I don't think they put rice in it, but she always put rice in it because, there were 8 people.
You gotta extend that crap.
It's expensive. So whenever I make it, there's always a little rice in the bottom, so you can finish your
that's the secret.
Your soup. Yeah. Don't tell anybody.
Okay.
The mom stretch.
Love that. Now, as you're pouring this next wine, let's talk about your chickens.
Oh, yes, my baby.
Your babies.
I have.
How many do you have?
We have some old girls who are passing on, but I think I have 26 now.
26?
Yes. We have actually 2 that are going to be 10. They're 9 going on 10.
How big is your coop?
We have a big coop. We have 2 coops in a big run, and then we have we call it small freedom, where they get to go out of the enclosed coop into like an open area, and then big freedom is they just get to run wherever they want. We don't let them have big freedom that much, but they have we're in the Santa Cruz Mountains, so we have a puma-proof cage and run, and for them when we're not there, so they don't get hurt. But they're the best pets. I highly, highly recommend it.
How many eggs are you getting with
right
that?
now? Because we have a bunch of old girls, we get about 8 or 10 eggs a day, and now they're going to start molting, so they'll slow down a little bit.
Okay.
But we have I keep forgetting how old some of them are. I think most of them are 5 years and older, and that's sort of when they stop laying. 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
They'll stop laying.
So then they become just more pets.
Yeah, they're definitely there are we call them the huggables.
Huggables, I love that.
So this is the Syrah we're tasting. This is our San Saba Syrah.
Get a little bit of smokiness.
Yeah.
Guaiacol.
17. Yep. For sure, yeah.
Have you ever smelled straight guaiacol?
I don't know if I have. I might have in sensory class years ago, but
yeah, I have. I actually have a little vial of it at home because I'm really into perfume.
Right.
And I got a vial from a perfumer because we were talking about wine and things, and she said, you might be interested in this.
Right.
It's super strong.
Smoky. Yeah. It's like liquid smoke.
I know.
I actually
In
make
case of emergency, grab the guaiacol.
I actually make my own soap, so I have a lot of essential oils, and then I use them for sensory class when I train. We train our staff and stuff. So yeah, it works out. But I don't have guaiacol. But I use the liquid smoke you can buy at the grocery store is pretty powerful.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
That's neat. You make your own soap.
Yeah, it's once you get all the stuff, it's not hard. But I make a couple batches a year, and
this is just body soap, or do you shampoo too?
No, just body soap, just regular saponified soap.
What's your favorite flavor? Is that the right?
I always, whenever I do a batch, I always do a big batch of lavender. And a big batch of something else, whatever I decide to do that day. But I always do usually a sunflower-based oil soap with lavender and poppy seeds in it. So
a little, yes,
gotta have that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now my sister's gotten into making soap, which is good because it used to be I'd do 2 batches a year and it'd last me the whole year plus Christmas gifts. Now then everybody wants it for Christmas and I have to do so now she's making. I'm like, you give some Christmas stuff away, I give some Christmas stuff away.
Balance it out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm not just a soap maker,
This is amazing.
This is really good. Yeah.
The beauty of this wine is it is a cool climate Syrah, so you get the fruitiness, but you also get a lot of that. I always call it the curry spices, that caraway and cardamom.
Yes.
And and it just reminds me of a good, you're toasting herbs or spices for a curry. And I love that. I love that subtlety because I think Syrah, things get very rich for me. I'm not a sweets eater particularly. I'm not a sweets drinker. Things get very rich for me very, very fast. And so when you drink some of these big Syrahs, it's just hard to drink, it can be a little bit of a struggle. So
I agree.
I love these sort of cooler climate, higher acid, more herbaceousness.
Sure.
components.
A little bit earthier.
Yep. More spice.
Delicious.
Yeah, I love this wine. It's my other go-to.
And are these your grapes or do you?
Yep, we get about 12 tons out of here. We don't have a lot. We have 3 acres. We have 3 clones though, and so they sort of create a complexity. Just like different coopers create a complexity for me. Different stem treatments create a complexity for me. Different clones create a complexity for me. So would you rather be a chef that just gets salt and pepper, or would you rather be a chef that gets a whole pantry of spices? I get a whole pantry of spices, and we try to keep them separate so then we can use them that way. And if you think about it that way, that's what when you talk about keeping your job exciting, that's what keeps my job exciting.
I love that description, the pantry of spices.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we have one last wine that we definitely want to get to because it's
grab
really different.
Yes.
That Syrah, y'all, is really beautiful. If you
Yeah.
can get your hands on a bottle, I highly recommend it.
Thanks for sharing all that with us.
Oh, yeah, of course. I just want to grab some glassware there because we're going to actually finish this with a glass of our Ex Dolio Falanghina. It's Italian white varietal that we do here on skins. It's a dry wine, so it's not sweet, even though it looks like a sweet wine.
The color is almost orange.
Well, would you call this an orange wine?
Well, I
Or
can't
just a
legally
skin
call it
contact?
an orange wine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a skin contact white wine, essentially. And we make it in the Dolio. We make it in terracotta.
Okay.
You make it in terracotta?
Yeah, so we'll take you through the winery when we're done, and you'll see our big terracotta. I call them my really expensive terracotta flower pots. But they're fermenters, and normally in Europe and Eastern Europe, in fact, I still think they use them at a lot of wineries. They'll be in the ground. They'll dig a hole, and you'll just see the mouth of the Dolio.
Oh, to keep it cool in the ground?
To keep it cool. And then we ferment in them. And then, I always joke because I think in gladiator days, they used to put gladiator sweat and all sorts of stuff in wine.
Oh.
And this is unfiltered. I always say we keep it old school, but at least we don't put gladiator sweat in it.
Thank you.
So that's good. But it is unfiltered, so you'll see some particles and some tartrates and other things in there.
This is going to sound like maybe this is maybe it's a dumb question, although you're not supposed to be dumb questions, but doesn't it seep into the terracotta vessel? It actually,
the terracotta, we get air permeation. It does have a coating on the inside. You can actually order them with a I think it's a beeswax coating. Ours do not have beeswax coating, but no, it doesn't. But it does breathe. I mean, these are the reason why people are using concrete in all these interesting shapes now is, I think, because we have a better ability to clean them, whereas we didn't used to. And B, we kind of want a little air. Some wines need a little air. I know there's a paranoia, especially with Pinot and air, and people think Pinot is very delicate. I think Pinot can be delicate. I think actually Pinot is more durable than we give it credit for. And I think it can use a little bit of energy in it. I think that a lot of people are moving toward these concrete eggs in these terracotta pots because I think it's a little more natural. And I think we don't mind that it has a little air. You just have to watch it more. You have to be more careful. And you have to make sure you get the containers get clean.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
this is like a little explosion in your mouth.
You know, it's interesting because I think this is a cheese course wine. Again, I'm not a big sweets. It's dry, so it's not sweet, even though it looks like a sweet wine. It looks like a sherry almost. But it has, to me, it's like the dried apricot on your cheese plate. So I love it with like a salty, like a pecorino. I love it with salty cheese because I think it's sort of that dried apricot.
It even has the look of it.
Yeah, it does. And once you say that to people, they've taste it. I think most people pick it up pretty quick that it's very dried apricot to me.
It's beautiful. Really fun.
It even smells like a dried apricot. It's so good.
It does.
And the scary thing about this wine is, although it's not high in alcohol, because we pick it so early because the pH is really low. It literally, I pick it when it's at 3.0 pH because if I waited any longer, it'd be Christmas. And it's just so different than how it grows in Italy. When we first planted this fruit, I had been tasting a lot of 11% Italian Falanginas. And I'm like, great, I'm going to have another super bright white. I love them. My thing, got it. I went out and checked it at 22 bricks. The pH was 2.6. Like, you can't eat this. You can't even put it in your mouth. It's so acidic. Wow. I mean, stomach acid is like 2.57 or something. It's horrible. And so I stopped looking at sugars, and you just have to look at acids. And when it would get to like 2.95, 2.98, close to 3, I would just pick it, and it would be November. So, I mean, otherwise, it's just different here. It's always my biggest problem when people say, oh, the Santa Lucias are like the Côte d'Or. I'm like, yeah, except for this is California. Like, this is California, guys. We don't need to be like anybody else. Stop worrying about it and just make just own it and do what you gotta do. And so, but you know, that was my naivete, though. I was like, I'm going to make an 11% Falangina.
No, you're not.
Like, no, you're not.
California.
Well, I love that you like to experiment. You know, that you're always looking for something different, and that you take on a challenge like this with, you know, with uncertain results.
Yeah, I mean, this was a lot of it was based too on Michael's influence because he drinks a lot of Falangina in Italy when he's there. Not like this. I think he drinks mostly bright white Falanginas. They're very refreshing. They are. Something you'd have at like a noon time with your lunch with a piece of fish. So this is a little different than that, but
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's
great.
Like it. Yeah, I love it too. I love it.
So Sabrine, for folks who are listening, they can come visit you here at the tasting room in the Salinas Valley, but you also have another tasting room.
Yeah, we have a tasting room in Carmel, in the Carmel Plaza Shopping Center. We're right next to the cheese shop down in the lower level.
Good place to be.
Yeah, it's a lovely place to be, and we have some great neighbors there. The cheese shop being one of them. And then we're open there 7 days a week. We're open here out at the winery Friday through Monday, so mostly over the weekend.
Well, you just have an incredible selection of wonderful wines that are really expressive of this area, but also just beautifully made. So hats off to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Take a big theatrical bow because
Yes,
encore.
Encore.
You figure after 17 harvests, you've sort of kind of figured it out, you know. But there's always something. You're right. There is always something to learn. I'm always trying to figure stuff out, and I mean that's part of what keeps my job interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it has been such a pleasure tasting with you, getting to hang out in this beautiful location on a beautiful day. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We've had a ball, and we thank you for the wine and
Cheers.
for the time. Sip, sip, hooray,
sip.
Sabrine.
Yes.
Well, that's going to do it for our show today. Thanks so much for listening. We hope if you enjoyed our podcast, you will share the Sip Sip Hooray podcast with your friends and family and spread the word.
And if you liked this episode, whatever podcast platform you are listening on, if you could go in and give us a rating, that helps other folks find our podcast, and we'd appreciate it.
Yes, we are Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on all your social media platforms, so pretty easy to find us, and we hope that you will go back and listen to some of our past episodes. You can find them all on sipsiphooray.podcast.com.
Well, Mary Babbitt, that was another great show. I look forward to the next one. Sip Sip Hooray.
Sip Sip Hooray.